So, the problem is that we've got a different world to what we had 100 years ago, or even to some extent 50 years ago perhaps. We've entered a situation where our technology has, I think, basically been the cause of us being lonely. Mobile, nuclear families at best that have to suffer the death of the spouse typically. They don't both die together. Children that go off and start again, or are forced out the home to start again without, they're on their own without relationships. They scrap around fast perhaps to find an unsuitable partner and they try and tack together relationship for life, and it doesn't typically work. What's the solution? What's the solution to the situation we find ourselves in, namely a modern society, modern Western, typically urban society? One solution that economically doesn't necessarily seem to be open to most of us would be, let's move back to a rural type, traditional situation. You know, we get ourselves out of the city and we start to set up, we're Abraham, aren't we? We leave the city of Ur of the Chaldees and we go off into the wilderness and, hasn't quite got our customs and so on. You know, the Canaanites aren't quite what we were back in Persia, ancient Persia, whatever it was called. And Babylon, I suppose, was it? Yeah. I don't know. And it's a hard life. Well, his solution was, okay, I'm going to do that. And I'm taking my God with me, my house God. And I'm going to be devoted to him. Now, he had a house God to take. Because he came from a religious type society. You may find yourself in the modern world and you don't have a house God you can take. You've got modern world, whatever that is. Mixture of all sorts of things and religions and so on perhaps, but perhaps not in your experience much. Or of course you can artificially borrow some religion, and the Jesus story really comes to your rescue here and says, don't do that. It's your dad. What's your dad? Your heavenly dad. And it's his dad doesn't seem to be quite the same as the dad of the Pharisees, does it? It definitely doesn't seem to be anything that Herod knows either. He's an incredible individualist in a society that does allow individualism, provided it accepts everyone else's individualism. You know, you can worship your God and religion, provided you also worship the emperor, because the emperor is pretty insistent on this, you see. And where the Jesus story is set, the local people have an official religion, and that seems to be dominating the local state politics. And if you you don't want to come into a clash with that, or they may crucify you. So the Jesus story actually inadvertently tells you that it's best not to go against the flow of your local society, because if you're going to stay in it, because they'll crucify you. And Abraham is also a good example of that. He says, goodness, I better do better than this, I'm getting out. And he leaves. Well, actually, I think it's with his dad. It's his dad that makes the decision to leave. Abraham just keeps on going, you know. Now, I'm not saying that either of them are true history. I'm simply saying that they're both good examples of what was going on, in a sense, from the point of view of the story. In the more recent times, you've had people that decided they're going to set up communities, and typically they're not urban communities. They tend to be ones that gravitate to something more traditional as they see it, and yet in a sense incredibly new, and they become new age communities or whatever. And they don't last very long typically, they're not awfully successful, but I think the most successful probably have been the Ananda communities. There's about 9 of them in the world. They have a sort of, they have a view that combines something of Christianity and Hinduism. Well, yeah, to some extent anyway. To the point now, the solution, which is, well, as I understand it, the best option is the Jesus story. And I focus in, as you know, on John 17, that it's your dad, your God. And he loves you. He's eternal, he's all-powerful. And you may as well believe in him rather than anyone else, because that's probably what you value. Someone who loves you, is very capable, very able, and sees you as their child, and you see him as your dad. Now that's an eternal, wonderful person. Not going to divorce you, I'll never leave you nor forsake you. That's the whole point of the Jesus story. Yeah, it's the Father, the Son, namely the Holy Spirit, and Jesus, the guide, the teacher, with you forever. That's the setup. Now you may say it's a pure fantasy. But you're in a world of uncertainty. Everything is unknown here. Even your thinking at the minute, you could be dreaming. You could be in the reality of the dream I had last night. And it was reality when I was in it, but it was a dream apparently. And this that I'm talking to you now was not a reality. Not in my dream. In my dream there was just the construct of the dream. I remember I was holding something, it broke, and the contents had lots of seeds in it, in a sort of liquidy sort of mixture. And it just went over everything, all over the furniture, the carpet, and I was in someone else's house, I think, and it was the last straw and I just had enough and broke down. In the presence of this person who I needed to come to my rescue, and they sort of did. But it was a very unhappy state. And that was my reality in the dream. Do you see? I had no connection, link or memory or thought of this reality that I'm in now. My actual reality that I'm in now is I'm laying in bed. It's a nice sunny morning. I'm in Hamilton, New Zealand, and the date according to this recording, and I'm chatting to my phone. You call that a reality? I'm not sure about that. Anyway, and you may one day hear it, and I will hear it because I'll review it in the coming few days, all being well. But there's a certain uncertainty about that. You never know about the next few days, do you? Do you see? What are you choosing to believe about the future that makes your present good, given your understanding? Now you could say, oh, well, I can make my present good by I don't know, wine, women and song. And you could say, yes, but that won't give you an immediately good future, will it? I mean, I've never drunk alcohol seriously, but I've never been drunk, so to speak, never had a hangover, but who wants a hangover tomorrow morning, so perhaps I won't drink too much. Do you see, you start to modify the present according to your expectations and hopes about the future. If you drink too much, you don't hope not to have a hangover tomorrow. Oh, well, I won't drink too much in that case. Do you see it? What hopes are you entertaining? Do you lose anything at all? Well, do you lose much at all? Put it that way. Probably anything. By assuming your God exists and loving him accordingly and devoting your life to him. After all, it is your values. He is the personification of your values. Now, if your values really are, for argument's sake, drinking alcohol, then you better incorporate him into your view of your God until you're quite clear that's not your view of your God. Your God would come to your rescue from this addiction that you've got, or this propensity. It might not be an addiction yet. So really you think, no, my God wouldn't want me to have alcohol, and I'm devoted to my God. Why? Because you honestly feel in your heart you'd rather not have alcohol in your life, because it seems to run this risk of, your God might be such that he'll allow alcohol because you will not run the risk of becoming dependent on it and it wrecking your life. But as time goes on, you start to see that it will wreck your life, and you can no longer maintain this value, this hope. Your hope becomes that your God would come to your rescue. So you better devote yourself always to your God. He will be changing according to your view of him. But ever in the present you should be devoting yourself to your God, not the alcohol. Right? No, it might not be alcohol, it might be, I'm not going to go through the list, All the addictions you could have. Could be computing, could be anything, couldn't it? TV. Could be running people out, gossiping. No. So you want to embody this perception from your own perspective, not other people's views, yours. You're a chatterbox. You're always running people out. It's negative. It's not building relationships, and you don't like it. You'd rather... It's not your values. You're doing it. It's not your values. Good. You should worship your God with your values. Get rid of it. That's always the advice to you in the present. Thou shalt love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. That's the way to go. Now, he never dies. The whole family may, or there may be no family around you. It may be just you and your God. You may say, well, I don't like this, I'd rather have a partner. Okay? But the partner's transitory. God isn't. Are you sure that's what you value? In other words, there's going to be a disaster at the end of it. And you may say, well, yes, but I will still have my God. Right. What will you need your God to be? Oh, more important than the partner that died. Otherwise I lose more than half of myself. I lose more than half of what's still alive. I must put God first. You can have a partner, but do put God first. And if you are putting God first in your life, your God, well, not clear you need a partner. Do you see? Well, you might say, but my values, well, are your values to have children? Are your values to have other people? Yes. One or many? 10 wives? That doesn't seem to work. Not sure you can be happy with more than one close partner. Demanding enough with one partner. Especially if you're putting God first. Because every now and again they will seem to collide with your view of God. And their view of God has to move with your view of God. My goodness. I hope it does. Otherwise one goes to one church, one goes to another. You know what I mean? That's a sort of world problem. Or one of you goes to church and one of you has a more individualistic approach. Or both of you don't go to any particular religion, but your view is different. Oh, that's going to be hard going. You're unequally yoked, aren't you? I think yoking is it's a misunderstanding. I'm not yoked by my religion. If I am, it's because it's not my religion. It's not my God. I've taken on the religion's God. And I need the partner to have done the same. And we'll both limp on together. I don't think that's very good at all. That's not the Jesus story. Are you worshipping the Jesus story then, Marshall? No, but I don't know, you could call it that, but I do think it's got a lot of helpful guidance in there that's been brushed over and not noticed. It has been noticed that he didn't marry, and Paul gives all sorts of warnings about whether you should marry or not, I think the big mistake with interpreting the Jesus story is that we've made a religion out of it. Should never have done that. There was plenty of religion around. That wasn't what Jesus was introducing. He didn't set up a church like Paul. And he didn't join the existing church like the Pharisees. Or if he did, they clearly rejected him. Let me just pause for a minute and take off on another track. I was sitting in the car yesterday by the lake, and I was flat. I couldn't even listen to my recordings. I just didn't have the will. And it was empty. And, well, quite honestly, my heart was longing after having a partner, and yet knowing at the same time that in some sense that's not the answer. Been there, done that, too often. Wonderful relationships that come to an end. I don't mean it's their fault or my fault, I just mean they come to an end. And you've got a disaster to cope with. You're back to square one. And it's as if then the disaster is ever hanging over you, getting closer. You know, old age, perhaps not divorce, but bereavement, and then just collapse. Death. So I knew that state of not feeling the nearness of God, the presence of God, was awful, was bad. I shouldn't say awful, I just felt, I'm flat, where's my life? I had no will. If someone passed by and I knew I had the will to chat and so on and behave normally and check they're all right and that, but I'd lost my dynamism, my reason for living. So I thought, well, I don't particularly want to, but I shall work through some of my recordings and check whether they're worth publishing or not. At the minute I feel they're not. That's the state I was in. I just felt, I'm no longer dynamized to go ahead with this recordings and publishing them and so on. I sort of would listen and not get far. So I thought, okay, well, I'll read them and I'll write them off, so to speak, as not worth publishing. Let's see, the ones that I've got that are being processed at the minute in my mind. So I went through one or two, and of course I got into it. It gave me the reminders that I need to come back on track. And though I had this series of dreams this morning, one of which I just talked to you about, I'm in the spiritual state of being able to handle it. I'm fully involved. I have meaning to life. Do you see, if no one ever heard these recordings, it's still, well, in a sense, the best thing I can be doing at present is giving me meaning to life and a great blessing. I'm full of life in my element, if you like. Do you see, the solution is very pragmatic indeed. It's what is your solution? And that may be, playing rugby. And the fellowship that goes with it. We're all pretty sure that that's not really going to be the answer to happy living. Playing rugby. And it would certainly damage your health. So you might shift to watching rugby. No, I don't mean that. I mean, you should think of something a bit more fundamentally that's going to solve your life. Meaning to life. You need a meaning to life. What is your meaning to life? Follow it most earnestly, with your whole, your heart, soul, mind and strength. you'll adjust accordingly quite quickly, because you'll start to see what would be better and what's wrong with doing such. Your values will change accordingly. Now, as I see it, to handle the lifelessness of no meaning to life, the finest meaning to life is the personification of what you truly value. It's the finest for you. Pursue that and adjust accordingly as your view adjusts. Thank you, Dad. Well, I think you'll find life eternal at the end of it. I don't know. I'm in a world of uncertainty. The Jesus story thinks you'll find life at the end of it. Life eternal. And you can enter into it now. This moment. In fact, now is all you've got. You can only do it in a now. And you don't know how many nows you're going to get there. And the best use of the present is unquestionably entering into it, loving your God with all your heart, soul, mind and strength. And farewell. You will fare well. Thank you, Dad. Oh, and if you don't have too much experience of this endless series of YouTube videos that I've done, the way to it is to whatsoever's good and lovely, think on these things. You'll find that gratitude rises in your heart and being. You want to thank your God. It's a good idea to actually practice doing just that, being in the habit of thanking God all the time for all the things that you would otherwise take for granted that are absolutely pivotal in your well-being and happiness. The air you breathe, the food you eat, the body that you have, the people that you do know, the shops you go to, whatever it is, the plants you have, the pets you have, the things you are able to do, the finance that's whatever it is. But for every detail of life too, little synchronicities that just bless you, the thing you drop that doesn't break, the thing you drop that did break, okay, I'll trust you for it, God, not a problem. Do you see? Practice valuing those things around you, whatsoever's good and lovely. Think on these things. Gratitude will grow. Hope will automatically grow. Trust in the future, trust in your God, in fact, will grow. Peace will grow. Joy, you'll find joy and peace. You'll sleep better. You'll be attracted to that which does you good. You'll be blessed by the way you're living. You'll be transformed simply by the practice of whatsoever's good and lovely, thinking upon these things, those things around you. And be in the habit of thanking God in a very pedestrian, verbal way. Thank you, Dad, for this. Thank you for my car, or the accommodation I'm in, or the curtains, or the bed, the comfort of bed, the sleep I've just had. Thank you for thoughts of you. Love the thoughts of you. Thank you for thoughts of you. Become a thankful person, and thank those people around you too. They will blossom because they know you value them. And your God will blossom in your heart because you value him. You will achieve the desires of your heart. You will have entered life eternal. Bless you. Thank you, Dad.